told her to get on the ground. They told her she was nobody. They were wrong. Maya simply wanted to get home to her son. She was a nurse, a mother, and a law-abiding citizen. But to Officer Blake Donovan, she was just another target on a lonely stretch of highway. An easy mark for a power trip. He thought he had all the leverage. He thought the badge made him a god. But when he threatened to take her child, Maya didn't scream. She didn't fight. She made one terrifyingly calm phone call. She didn't call a lawyer. She called her brother. And Officer Donovan was about to learn that there are predators in this world, far more dangerous than a corrupt cop with a gun. The rain in Oak Creek didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It was late at night. Maya Reynolds gripped the steering wheel of her 2016 Honda Civic, her knuckles matching the white of her nursing uniform. Her shoulders burned with that specific deep tissue ache that only comes from turning heavy patients and standing on hospital tile for a double shift. All she could think about was Micah. Her 6-year-old son was waiting at the babysitter's house, probably asleep on the couch with his thumb in his mouth. If she didn't get there soon, the babysitter would charge her for the extra hour, and Maya didn't have the extra $40. Not this week. She checked her speedometer. 34 in a 35 zone. Perfect. She was invisible. She had to be. Then the world turned blue. The lights exploded in her rear-view mirror, blindingly bright, bouncing off the wet asphalt and fracturing through the raindrops on her windshield. The siren didn't wail. It just gave a short, aggressive whoop-whoop that made her heart hammer against her ribs like a trapped bird. "No," Maya whispered, the word escaping as a breath of condensation. "Please, God, no. Not tonight." She pulled over slowly, easing the Civic onto the gravel shoulder near the old textile factory. It was a dead zone. No street lights, just the looming skeleton of the abandoned building and the rhythmic swish-swish of her wipers. She did everything right. She put the car in park. She turned on the interior dome light. She rolled down the window despite the freezing drizzle. She placed both hands at the 10 and 2 positions on the wheel and spread her fingers wide. She watched the side mirror. 2 shadows detached themselves from the patrol car. One stayed back near the cruiser's trunk, the backup. The other approached with a swagger that made Maya's stomach turn. He had a flashlight beam that cut through the darkness, aimed directly into her eyes, blinding her. "License and registration," a voice barked. "No good evening. No do you know why I pulled you over? Just a command." Maya squinted against the glare. "It's in my glove box, officer. I'm going to reach for it now." "Don't tell me what you're going to do. Just do it slowly." Maya moved with agonizing slowness. She retrieved the documents and held them out the window. The flashlight didn't waver from her face. As the officer snatched the papers, the beam finally dropped, illuminating his name tag. B. Donovan. Officer Blake Donovan looked like he had been carved out of granite in bad intentions. He was thick-necked, with a buzz cut that was a week overdue, and eyes that looked bored by his own cruelty. He wasn't looking at her license. He was scanning the back seat of the car. "Rough night, miss." He glanced at the ID. "Reynolds, I'm a nurse, officer. I'm coming off a double shift at the VA hospital. I'm just trying to pick up my son." "The VA? Huh?" Donovan scoffed, leaning his forearms on her doorframe, invading her space. The smell of stale coffee and wintergreen tobacco hit her. You swerved back there. Crossed the yellow line? I didn't, Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. I've been under the limit the whole way. Are you calling me a liar, Miss Reynolds? The temperature in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees. No, officer, I'm just saying I was being careful. Careful people usually have something to hide. Donovan shone the light into the back seat again. You got anything in here I should know about? Weapons? Drugs? No, just my son's car seat and some groceries. Donovan stepped back, tapping his flashlight against his palm. He looked back at his partner, a younger man who looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Donovan smirked. Step out of the vehicle, Miss Reynolds. Maya froze. Why? I gave you my license. The car is clear. I smell marijuana. Donovan lied. He said it with the casual ease of a man who had said it 1,000 times before. Probable cause? Step out now. Maya knew the script. She knew that arguing would only make it worse. But the injustice of it, the sheer fabricated weight of it, clogged her throat. She wasn't smoking. She had never smoked in her life. She was a mother trying to survive. Officer, please. My son is waiting. I'm tired. I haven't done anything. Donovan's hand dropped to his holster. He didn't unsnap it, but the threat was loud and clear. I'm not going to ask you again. Get out of the car or I will drag you out. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely find the latch. She opened the door and stepped into the rain. The water soaked through her scrubs instantly, chilling her to the bone. Hands on the hood, Donovan commanded. Spread your legs. As Maya leaned over the cold metal of her own car, rain plastering her hair to her face, she saw the flashing lights reflecting in the puddles. She felt small. She felt helpless. But as Donovan's hands patted her down, rougher than necessary, lingering too long near her waist, Maya's fear began to harden into something else, something cold and sharp. She remembered who she was, and more importantly, she remembered who she was related to. Clear, Donovan muttered, sounding almost disappointed he hadn't found a weapon on her person. He shoved her slightly, pinning her hip against the side mirror. Stand there. Don't move. Maya shivered, hugging herself against the cold. Officer, can I please stand under the overhang? It's freezing. You'll stand where I tell you to stand, Donovan snapped. He turned to his partner. Hale tossed the car. Officer Cody Hale, the rookie, hesitated. He was pale, with a baby face that looked out of place under the brim of his hat. He glanced at Maya, his eyes darting away in shame. Donovan, she's a nurse. The car's clean. I didn't smell anything. Donovan spun around, his face inches from Hale's. Did I ask for your opinion, Boot? I said I smell it. That means we smell it. Now search the damn car before I write you up for insubordination. Yes, sir, Hale mumbled and ducked into the driver's side of the Civic. Maya watched as Hale rummaged through her life. He pulled out the glove box contents, napkins, old receipts, a tire pressure gauge, and dumped them on the passenger seat. He reached into the back, tossing Micah's backpack onto the wet floorboard. Hey, Maya shouted instinctively. That's my son's homework. Quiet, Donovan roared. He stepped closer to her, looming. You're making a scene, Maya. You resisting? I'm not resisting, she said through gritted teeth. I'm watching you destroy my property. For no reason. I think you're high, Donovan said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I think you're high and driving around this town endangering decent people. I think I need to take you in for a blood test. That's a DUI, Maya. You know what happens then? He paused for effect. You lose your nursing license, he smiled, a predator showing teeth. And then you lose the kid. The world stopped. The rain, the lights, the cold, it all vanished. All Maya heard was the threat against Micah. You lose the kid. You can't do that, she whispered. Watch me, Donovan said. I can call CPS right now. Emergency removal. Tell them I found an erratic driver. Suspected narcotics, uncooperative. They'll put little Micah in a foster home tonight. Maybe a nice group home. Maya's vision tunneled. This wasn't a traffic stop anymore. This was an abduction under the color of law. Donovan was enjoying this. He was feeding on her terror. He wanted her to beg, to cry, maybe even to lash out, so he would have an excuse to use the baton hanging from his belt. She took a deep breath, forcing her heart rate to slow. She had seen trauma before. She worked in the ER and the VA. She dealt with men who had seen the worst of humanity. She knew that panic was a death sentence. Officer Donovan, she said, her voice surprisingly steady, I would like to make a phone call. Donovan threw his head back and laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. A phone call? You think this is the movies? You don't get a phone call until you're booked. I need to call someone to pick up my son, Maya lied. If you take me in, someone has to get him. Or do you want to explain to your captain why a 6-year-old was left abandoned at a babysitter's house because of your stop? Donovan stopped laughing. He calculated. Abandoning a kid was bad paperwork. Make it quick, he spat. But if you call a lawyer, I snatch the phone and we go straight to the station. You call a babysitter, that's it. Maya reached into her scrub pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out her cracked iPhone. She didn't scroll to the babysitter. She didn't scroll to a lawyer. She went to her favorites. There was only one contact there. Big Brother. She pressed dial. She put the phone to her ear, praying, Please pick up. Please, Zane. Pick up. It rang once, twice. Donovan was watching her, tapping his foot impatiently. Tick-tock, Mama. On the third ring, the line clicked open. The voice on the other end wasn't groggy, even though it was the middle of the night. It was crisp, alert, and dangerously calm. It was a voice that commanded rooms just by whispering. Maya. Zane, he said, using his childhood nickname, her voice finally breaking. I need you. Are you hurt? The shift in his tone was immediate. The warmth vanished, replaced by a metallic, intense focus. No, not yet. I'm on Route 9 near the old textile factory. A cop, Officer Donovan, he pulled me over. He's tearing my car apart. He says he's going to take me in for DUI. He planted something, Zane. Or he's going to. He threatened to take Micah. There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence so heavy it felt like the air pressure dropped. Is he there right now? Zane asked. He's standing right in front of me. Put him on speaker. Maya lowered the phone. Officer, my brother wants to speak to you. Donovan rolled his eyes. Oh, for God's sake, give me that. He snatched the phone from her hand. He didn't put it on speaker. He put it to his ear, a smirk playing on his lips. Listen here, buddy, Donovan said, puffing his chest out. I don't know who you think you are, but your sister is in a lot of trouble. So unless you're the police commissioner, I suggest you shut your mouth. And Donovan stopped. Maya watched his face. The smirk didn't just fade. It evaporated. His eyebrows knitted together in confusion, then rose in shock. He pulled the phone away from his ear for a second, staring at it as if it had burned him, then slowly put it back. "Who is this?" Donovan asked, his voice losing its swagger. He listened for another 10 seconds. Maya saw Officer Hale pop his head out of her car, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Donovan's face turned a shade of gray that looked unhealthy, even in the blue strobe lights. He swallowed hard. "Look, pal, I don't care what unit you say you're with. This is my jurisdiction. You threaten me again, and I'll—" Donovan suddenly flinched, as if the voice on the other end had physically slapped him. "Okay," Donovan stammered. "Okay, you'll listen to me." The call cut off. Donovan stared at the black screen of the phone. He looked at Maya. There was fear in his eyes now, but it was masked by anger. He shoved the phone back into her chest. "Your brother?" Donovan hissed, leaning in close, his spittle hitting her cheek. "Has a big mouth. He thinks he can scare me. He thinks he can play soldier." Donovan grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha. I have a non-compliant suspect requesting a supervisor and a K-9 unit. Prepare for transport." He glared at Maya. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Nobody talks to me like that. Nobody." Maya clutched her phone. She didn't know exactly what Zane had said, but she knew her brother. Zane Reynolds didn't make threats. He made promises. And somewhere in the dark, she knew he was coming. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. It wasn't a clean mechanical sound, like in the movies. It was a gritty, pinching noise of metal biting into skin. Officer Donovan didn't bother to be gentle. He grabbed Maya's wrists and wrenched them behind her back, twisting her shoulders until the rotator cuffs screamed in protest. The cold steel ratcheted locked tight against her ulna bone, pinching the delicate skin of her wrist. "You're making a mistake," Maya gasped, her cheek pressed against the wet trunk of her Civic. The rain was coming down harder now, mixing with the tears she refused to let fall. "Please, just check my bag properly. Just look at my ID again." "You lost your chance to talk when you handed the phone to your boyfriend," Donovan grunted, tightening the left cuff one notch too far on purpose. "And don't tell me that was your brother. I know a thug threat when I hear one." He spun her around. Maya stumbled, losing her footing on the slick gravel. Donovan caught her by the upper arm, his fingers digging into her bicep, and marched her toward his patrol car. To Maya, the cruiser looked like a shark waiting in the dark water. The back door was already open. The interior was a hard plastic shell designed to be hosed down. It smelled of industrial disinfectant, stale sweat, and the lingering copper scent of old violence. "Get in," Donovan ordered, shoving her head down. Maya crawled into the back seat. It was humiliating. With her hands cuffed behind her, she had no balance. She had to slide across the hard plastic seat, her legs awkwardly shuffling. As Donovan slammed the door, the sound sealed her in. The air inside was stiflingly hot, the heater blasting at full force, suffocating her. She was trapped. Through the plexiglass divider and the wire mesh, she watched Donovan standing in the rain. He was pacing. His swagger had transformed into a jagged, nervous energy. He kept looking at his watch, then out into the darkness of the highway, then back at his partner, Hale. Hale was standing by the Civic, looking miserable. He had stopped searching the car. He was just standing there, rain dripping off the brim of his hat, looking at Maya in the back of the cruiser. Their eyes met for a second. Maya's pleading, Hale's filled with a cowardly apology, before he looked away, kicking at a loose stone. Inside the cruiser, the police radio crackled with static bursts of jargon. Unit 4 Alpha, K9 unit is 20 minutes out. We have a pileup diverting traffic. Donovan grabbed the mic on his shoulder, his knuckles white. Dispatch, I need a unit sooner than that. I have a volatile situation here. Suspect has made threats involving third parties. Copy for Alpha, all units tied up, sit tight. Donovan cursed and kicked the tire of his own cruiser. The thud vibrated through the chassis, shaking Maya. He was unraveling. The phone call had gotten under his skin deeper than he wanted to admit. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, shielding it from the rain, and lit one with shaking hands. The cherry of the cigarette glowed angry red in the dark. Maya closed her eyes and leaned her head against the window. The vibration of the engine hummed against her skull. She tried to focus on her breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It was a technique Zane had taught her years ago, back when he was just her big brother and not a ghost in the military machine. Donovan thought he was a thug, a gangbanger making empty threats. Maya almost laughed, a hysterical bubble rising in her chest. Donovan had no idea. He didn't know about the medals Zane kept in a shoebox because he didn't like looking at them. He didn't know about the scars that mapped his back like a jagged atlas of war zones most Americans couldn't find on a globe. He didn't know that Zane didn't belong to the Army anymore. Not really. He belonged to a unit that officially didn't exist. A Tier 1 asset group that operated in the shadows where the rules of regular law enforcement didn't apply. She remembered the last time she saw him at Thanksgiving. He had been quiet, carving the turkey with surgical precision. He looked tired. Not sleepy tired, but soul tired. He had told her, "Maya, I spend my life hunting monsters. It's hard to come back and pretend the world is safe." Now a monster had found her. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The rain turned into a deluge, hammering the roof of the car like 1,000 tiny fists. The isolation was absolute. Just her, the dark highway, and the 2 cops standing in the floodlights. Suddenly Donovan stopped pacing. He dropped his cigarette into a puddle. He tilted his head, listening. Maya opened her eyes. She couldn't hear anything over the rain and the heater, but she saw Donovan reach for his holster, unsnapping the retention strap. He walked toward the center of the road, peering into the black void beyond the textile factory. Officer Hale looked up, startled. "Sarge, what is it?" "Shut up," Donovan hissed. "Listen." Then Maya heard it. Or rather, she felt it. It wasn't a siren, it wasn't the roar of an engine. It was a low-frequency thrumming, a rhythmic thup-thup that vibrated in her chest cavity. It was coming from above, but there were no lights in the sky. Donovan unholstered his weapon. "Dispatch, this is 4 Alpha. I have an aircraft. Low altitude, no lights, unidentified. Do you have traffic in my sector?" The radio remained silent, not just quiet, dead. The static was gone. "Dispatch!" Donovan shouted. Nothing. The lights on the dashboard of the cruiser flickered. The heater died. The laptop mount, usually glowing with data, went black. The engine sputtered and cut out. Darkness swallowed them. The only light came from Donovan's flashlight, the beam cutting frantically through the rain. "Hale, get to the car," Donovan yelled, backing up toward the cruiser. "Radio is dead. My car just died." "Mine too." Hale screamed from the Civic where the headlights had just extinguished. They were alone in the dark, on a deserted stretch of road with the sound of the invisible chopper getting louder, pressing down on them like a physical weight. And then, on the road ahead where the darkness was deepest, 3 pairs of headlights ignited simultaneously. They were blindingly bright, high-intensity LEDs that cut through the rain like lasers. They didn't flicker. They didn't waver. 3 black SUVs were sitting across the road, blocking both lanes. They hadn't made a sound approaching. They were just there. Officer Blake Donovan had been a cop for 12 years. He had been in bar fights, high-speed chases, and 1 shootout. He considered himself a predator. He was the one who knocked on the door. He was the one who held the power. But as he stared at the wall of white light blocking the road, Blake Donovan felt a primal sensation he hadn't felt since he was a child, afraid of the basement. He felt like prey. "Who is that?" Hale squeaked, drawing his gun but holding it like it was a poisonous snake. "State troopers, feds. Put the gun down, Hale," Donovan said, his voice trembling. He shielded his eyes against the glare. "That's not the feds." The doors of the SUVs opened in unison. There was no shouting. No police. "Get down." No chaotic scrambling. The movement was fluid, synchronized, and terrifyingly silent. 6 figures stepped out. They were dressed in tactical gear, but not the blue polyester of the local SWAT team. They wore multicam black, a camouflage pattern designed for night operations. They wore high-cut ballistic helmets with quad-lens night vision goggles flipped up like insect eyes. They carried rifles that looked short, suppressed, and expensive. They moved in a phalanx, spreading out across the wet asphalt with the ease of water flowing over rock. They didn't point their weapons at the officers. They held them at the low ready, a posture that suggested they didn't need to aim to kill. They just needed to decide to. Donovan raised his flashlight, trying to find a face, a badge, anything to anchor him back to his authority. "Identify yourselves. This is an active crime scene. I am a police officer." The lead figure didn't stop. He walked straight down the center line, ignoring the rain, ignoring Donovan's gun, ignoring the shouting. He was a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered and moving with a kinetic lethality. He stopped 10 feet from Donovan. The man wasn't wearing a helmet. He was bareheaded, the rain soaking his short, dark hair. He wore a tactical vest over a dark gray thermal shirt. His face was hard, angular, and composed of sharp planes and shadows. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and utterly devoid of mercy. It was the face Maya had seen in family photos for 30 years. But it wasn't the brother who cracked jokes at barbecues. This was Zane. This was the commander. Zane Reynolds looked at Donovan. He didn't look at the gun in Donovan's hand. He looked directly into his pupils. "You're holding a weapon in the presence of a superior officer," Zane said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the sound of the rain and the idling SUVs like a razor blade. "I suggest you reholster it before my team perceives you as a threat." Donovan blinked, sweat mixing with rain on his forehead. "Superior officer, I'm Oak Creek Police. You have no jurisdiction here. Who are you?" Zane took 1 step closer. The distance between them was now intimate, dangerous. "My name is Lieutenant Colonel Zane Reynolds," he said, the rank landing like a hammer blow. "You have my sister in the back of that car." Donovan's heart stuttered. The brother. The voice on the phone. But this, This wasn't what he expected. He expected a gang member. He expected a loudmouth. He didn't expect a Tier 1 operator with a fire team of ghosts behind him. "She's a suspect," Donovan stammered, his bravado crumbling like wet sand. "DUI possession. I have probable cause." "You have nothing," Zane said. He didn't shout. He stated it as a fact of physics. "I know my sister. She doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, and she certainly doesn't cross yellow lines unless she's dodging a pothole." Zane turned his head slightly, looking past Donovan to the cruiser. He saw Maya's silhouette in the back, her head bowed. A muscle in his jaw jumped, the only sign of the rage boiling beneath his disciplined exterior. "Hale," Zane barked, not looking at the rookie. Officer Hale jumped, nearly dropping his gun. "Unlock the cruiser. Get her out now." Hale looked at Donovan, desperate for a command. Donovan was frozen, his mind racing. If he yielded now, he was finished. His ego, his reputation, it would all be gone. He had to hold the line. He was the law here. "Stay where you are, Hale," Donovan shouted, finding a shred of his bullying courage. He pointed his gun at Zane's chest. "Back off. I don't care if you're the president. You interfere with this arrest, and I will shoot you. Put your hands in the air." The world seemed to pause. The rain froze in the air. Behind Zane, the 5 operators raised their weapons. It happened in a blur of motion too fast to track. 5 red laser dots appeared instantly on Donovan's body, 1 on his forehead, 2 on his chest, 1 on his groin, 1 on his knee. Donovan gasped, freezing. He realized with sudden horrifying clarity that he was milliseconds away from being turned into pink mist. Zane didn't flinch. He didn't even blink at the gun pointed at his heart. He looked at Donovan with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Son," Zane said softly, "you are pointing a Glock 17 at a man who has hunted warlords in valleys you've never heard of. My snipers have been tracking your heartbeat since we turned the corner. You are not in control here. You are barely alive." Zane slowly raised his hand, not in surrender, but to point a finger at Donovan's face. "Drop the gun, or you will never hold anything again." Donovan's hand shook violently. He looked at the lasers dancing on his chest. He looked at the cold, dead eyes of the operators behind Zane. He looked at the empty highway where no help was coming. The gun clattered to the asphalt. Zane stepped forward, kicked the gun away into the darkness, and then, with a movement that was almost casual, he backhanded Donovan across the face. It wasn't a punch. It was a dismissal. The force of it knocked Donovan off his feet, sending him sprawling into the mud. Zane didn't look down at him. He walked past the fallen officer straight to the cruiser. He ripped the door handle so hard the metal groaned. "Maya," he said, his voice instantly changing, softening, becoming the brother again. "I'm here." Maya looked up, tears finally spilling over. "Zane, I got you," he whispered. "I got you." But as he reached in to undo her seatbelt, Donovan scrambled to his knees in the mud, humiliated, broken, and desperate. He reached for his radio on his shoulder, screaming into the dead air, "Officer down! Officer down! Shots fired! I need backup! I need everyone!" The radio crackled. The static was gone. A voice came through. But it wasn't the police dispatch. It was a calm female voice. Clear, high definition. "Officer Donovan, this is Defense Intelligence Agency oversight. Your comms have been rerouted. Stand down immediately. Your badge number is currently being flagged for federal review. Donovan stared at the radio in horror. Zane helped Maya out of the car. He wrapped his own tactical jacket around her shivering shoulders. He turned back to Donovan, who was kneeling in the mud like a penitent sinner. You wanted to call someone, Donovan? Zane asked, his eyes burning cold. You wanted to bring the law into this? Good, because I brought the real law, and we're just getting started. The silence that followed the chaos was heavy, broken only by the relentless drumming of the rain and the soft, rhythmic breathing of the operator standing guard. Maya sat in the passenger seat of the lead black SUV. The door open, her legs dangling out, but her body sheltered from the downpour. The leather seat was heated, a stark contrast to the freezing plastic of the patrol car cage. Zane had draped a heavy wool blanket over her shoulders, and she clutched a bottle of water he had cracked open for her. Her hands were still shaking, the red marks from the handcuffs vivid against her dark skin. She watched her brother. Zane was standing in the middle of the road, the rain sliding off his tactical vest. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't posturing. He was simply existing in a state of absolute control. He was directing his team with hand signals, small flicks of the wrist that sent heavily armed men moving with the precision of a watch mechanism. Officer Donovan was still on his knees in the mud, his hands zip-tied behind his back. Not with police cuffs, but with the thick yellow plastic restraints military units used for enemy combatants. He looked small. The arrogance that had filled the night air just minutes ago had drained out of him, leaving a hollow, terrified shell. He kept darting his eyes around, looking for a way out, looking for his authority. He found neither. Officer Hale stood by the Civic, pale as a sheet. He hadn't been restrained. He was vomiting into the tall grass by the roadside, the stress of the standoff finally breaking his constitution. Gunner, Zane said quietly. A massive man with a thick beard and eyes like flint stepped forward. Sergeant Major Gunner Voss. Maya remembered him from a Christmas party years ago. He had brought her son a toy truck. Now he looked like a Viking dropped into modern warfare. Sir, Gunner grunted. Strip the cruiser, Zane ordered. I want to know everything in that car, every receipt, every loose round, every digital file, and check the trunk thoroughly. On it. Gunner signaled two other operators. They descended on Officer Donovan's patrol car like locusts. They didn't ask for keys. One of them used a specialized tool to pop the trunk in seconds. Another began pulling apart the dashboard panels, looking for hidden compartments. You can't do this, Donovan shouted, his voice cracking. This is illegal search and seizure. You need a warrant. I'm a police officer. Zane walked over to him. He crouched down so his face was level with Donovan's. The water dripped from Zane's nose, but his eyes were dry and burning. You stopped being a police officer the moment you turned off your body cam, Zane said softly. Donovan froze. I didn't. We checked the log spread, Zane said, using the man's first name like a curse. The remote feed cut out 3 minutes before you pulled my sister over. Technical malfunction or standard operating procedure for when you want to hurt someone. Donovan swallowed hard. It's glitchy. The equipment is old. We'll see. From the back of the cruiser, Gunner gave a low whistle. Boss, you need to see this. Zane stood up and walked to the open trunk of the patrol car. Maya leaned forward from the SUV, her heart pounding. Gunner was holding a duffel bag. It wasn't standard police issue. It was a nondescript gym bag, battered and stained. He unzipped it under the glare of the SUV's headlights. Zane looked inside, his face hardening into granite. He reached in with a gloved hand and pulled out a Ziploc bag filled with white powder. It was a substantial amount, enough to put someone away for 20 years. Next, he pulled out a handgun, a snub-nosed .38 revolver. It was old, the serial number filed off, the metal pitted with rust, a throwdown piece, a weapon cops kept to plant on unarmed suspects after a bad shoot. And finally, a bottle of cheap vodka, half empty. Zane held the bag up, turning back to Donovan. The evidence hung in the air between them, damning and undeniable. "A drop kit," Zane said, his voice echoing in the dead silence of the highway. "You carry a felony in a gym bag." Donovan's face went slack. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. "This wasn't for a DUI," Zane continued, walking slowly back toward the kneeling officer. "You were going to plant the vodka to justify the arrest, and if she panicked, if she moved too fast, you had the gun ready to drop by her body." Maya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The reality of it washed over her. He hadn't just wanted to arrest her. He had prepared for the possibility of killing her. Zane dropped the bag in the mud in front of Donovan. "Hale," Zane barked. The rookie officer wiped his mouth and stumbled over, looking like he was walking to his execution. "Yes, sir." "Did you know about this?" Zane pointed at the bag. Hale looked at the bag, then at Donovan. He saw the way Donovan glared at him. A look of warning, a promise of retribution. But then Hale looked at the men in black armor standing around him. Men who looked like they ate nightmares for breakfast. He looked at Maya, shivering in the SUV. I knew he kept a bag," Hale whispered, his voice trembling. "He told me it was insurance for when the bad guys tried to get away with it." "He's lying," Donovan screamed. "The kid is a liar. He's trying to save his own ass." "Shut up," Gunner said, not even looking at Donovan. Zane looked at Hale. "Has he used it before?" Hale began to cry, soft, jagged sobs. "Last month, the kid on 4th Street, the one they said pulled a gun. I never saw a gun until Donovan went to the trunk. The revelation hung heavy in the rain. A murder. A murder covered up by a badge and a throwdown pistol." Zane closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them, the soldier was gone, and something darker, something ancient, was looking out. "Secure the evidence," Zane said to Gunner. "Bag it all. Fingerprints, DNA. I want the chain of custody so tight God himself couldn't break it." He turned back to Donovan. "You're not going to jail, Blake," Zane said. "Jail is for criminals. You're going to a federal black site until we unravel every single life you've destroyed. You're going to wish you had just written the ticket." The lights appeared on the horizon 10 minutes later. It wasn't just one car, it was a procession. Red and blue lights stretched for a quarter mile. A convoy of fury racing toward them. The local police force had finally mobilized. "Company," Gunner announced, checking the magazine in his rifle. "Local PD, looks like the whole shift." Zane didn't flinch. "Hold the perimeter. No one crosses the line. Weapons tight, but do not let them take the prisoner." The convoy screeched to a halt 50 yards away, blocked by the wall of black SUVs. Doors flew open. 20 uniformed officers spilled out, guns drawn, shouting, taking cover behind their doors. They were chaotic, angry, and confused. They saw their brother officer kneeling in the mud, zip-tied, surrounded by men in tactical gear. A large man with silver hair and gold stars on his collar stepped out of the lead cruiser. Chief of Police Warren Klein. He was red-faced, breathless, and holding a megaphone. "This is Chief Klein." His voice boomed, distorted by the rain and the speaker. "You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and step away from my officers. This is your final warning." Zane adjusted his jacket. He didn't pick up a megaphone. He didn't shout. He simply walked toward the barricade of SUVs, walking into the glare of 20 police spotlights. "Gunner, phone," Zane said. Gunner handed him a satellite phone. Zane pressed a single button. "Chief Klein," Zane called out, his voice projecting with the diaphragm power of a drill instructor. "I am holding a federal detainee involved in a conspiracy to manufacture evidence and violate civil rights under Title 18, Section 242. Stand your men down. You have 5 seconds before we open fire." Klein screamed, sweat flying from his brow. "I don't care who you are. You kidnapped my men." The tension was a physical thing. Fingers tightened on triggers. Maya watched from the car, terrified. This was it. This was where it turned into a massacre. "Put him on," Zane said into the satellite phone. He held the phone up, waiting. Suddenly the radio on Chief Klein's shoulder chirped. It wasn't the dispatch. It was a direct patch-through. "Chief Klein." The voice on the radio was male, gravelly, and sounded like it came from a very expensive office in Washington, D.C. Klein paused, lowering the megaphone. "Who is this?" "This is General Harlan Thorpe, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." "Do you recognize my voice, Chief?" Klein's face went white. Every cop in America knew who General Thorpe was. He was a war hero, a legend, and the man who currently had the president's ear. "General," Klein stammered into his shoulder mic. "Sir, I have a situation here. Mercenaries have my officer hostage." "Those are not mercenaries, Chief," Thorpe interrupted, his tone dipping into a dangerous low register. "That is Task Force 141, and the man you are screaming at is Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds. He is operating under my direct authority." Klein looked up at Zane, who was standing calm and still in the rain. "Now," Thorpe continued, "Colonel Reynolds has informed me that he has uncovered a pattern of corruption in your department involving Officer Donovan. He has evidence of planted narcotics and unregistered firearms." Klein looked back at Donovan kneeling in the mud. He looked at the terror on Donovan's face. Klein knew. Deep down, he had always known Donovan was a problem, a liability. But he had looked the other way. "Here is what is going to happen, Chief," Thorpe said. "You're going to order your men to holster their weapons. You are going to allow Colonel Reynolds to transport the prisoner to a federal holding facility. And then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about how you run your department. Do we have an understanding? Or do I need to send the National Guard to relieve you of your command?" Klein stood frozen for a long moment. The rain plastered his silver hair to his skull. He looked at his men who were looking to him for guidance. He looked at the military operators who hadn't moved an inch. Slowly, painfully, Klein holstered his weapon. "Stand down," Klein shouted to his men. His voice broke. "Stand down. Holster your weapons." A ripple of confusion went through the police line, but they obeyed. Guns clicked back into holsters. The tension snapped, leaving behind a heavy, awkward silence. Zane walked forward, crossing the no-man's land between the SUVs and the police cars. He stopped in front of Klein, "You have a rot in your house, Chief," Zane said quietly. "Donovan isn't the only one. My analysts are pulling your precinct's data right now. We're going to find every stop, every ticket, every arrest Donovan made in the last 5 years." Klein looked old, defeated. He was a high performer. His stats were good. "His stats were lies," Zane said, "and he almost killed my sister to keep them up." Zane turned back to the SUVs. "Load him up, we're leaving." 2 operators hoisted Donovan to his feet. He didn't fight. He hung limp, weeping openly now, stumbling toward the black SUV that would take him to a world of windowless rooms and endless questions. Zane walked back to Maya. He reached into the car and gently unbuckled her seatbelt. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get you home. Micah is waiting." Maya stepped out of the SUV. Her legs were shaky, but Zane's arm was like an iron bar around her waist, holding her up. She looked back at the police cruiser, now gutted and empty, sitting in the rain like a dead thing. She looked at the line of police officers, shamed and silent. She realized then that the balance of power had shifted permanently. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was the sister of a storm. "What about my car?" she asked, her voice raspy. "We'll have it towed to the shop, fixed up better than new," Zane promised. "Don't worry about anything, Maya. It's over." As they climbed into the back of the armored SUV, Maya leaned her head on her brother's shoulder. The smell of wet tactical gear and gun oil was overpowering, but to her it smelled like safety. "Zane," she whispered. "Thank you." Zane kissed the top of her head. "Always." The convoy of black SUVs rolled out, engines roaring, leaving the confused and terrified local police standing in the rain, watching the taillights fade into the night. But the story wasn't over. The takedown of Officer Donovan was just the beginning. The files found in that trunk would open a door to a conspiracy that went much higher than a roadside bully. Months later, the sun was shining on Oak Creek. But for Officer Blake Donovan, the world was about to go dark for a very long time. The federal courtroom was sterile, smelling of lemon polish and anxiety. There were no flashing lights here, no rainy highways where a badge made you a king. There was only the Honorable Judge Marilyn Hayes, a woman with a reputation for eating corrupt public servants for lunch. Maya sat in the back row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore a simple blue dress, looking every bit the dignified nurse and mother she was. Next to her sat Zane. He wasn't in tactical gear today. He wore a charcoal suit that fit his broad frame perfectly, though he still scanned the room with the alert, predatory grace of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Donovan stood at the defense table. He looked deflated. He had lost 20 pounds. His buzz cut had grown out into patchy tufts, and his cheap suit hung off him like a shroud. He didn't look back at the gallery. He couldn't. The evidence Zane's team had uncovered was catastrophic. The trunk of the patrol car had been a Pandora's box. It wasn't just the drop kit. It was a ledger. Donovan had been shaking down drug dealers, stealing their product, and selling it back to rival gangs. He had framed 3 other drivers in the last year alone. People who couldn't afford lawyers. People who had pleaded guilty just to go home to their families. Officer Hale had turned state's evidence. In exchange for immunity, he had sung like a bird, detailing every bribe, every threat, and every time Donovan had laughed about crushing the little people. Blake Donovan. Judge Hayes said, her voice echoing in the silent chamber. You were entrusted with the power to protect. Instead, you used it to prey on the vulnerable. You are a disgrace to the uniform and a danger to this society. Donovan flinched with every word. On the counts of deprivation of rights under color of law, possession with intent to distribute and obstruction of justice, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel banged, a final wooden period at the end of a long, dark sentence. Donovan slumped forward, sobbing into his hands. As the marshals hauled him away, he looked back once. His eyes met Maya's. He didn't see triumph in her face. He saw pity, and behind her he saw Zane watching him with cold indifference, like a man watching a bug get swept away. Outside the courthouse, the air was crisp and clean. It's over, Maya breathed out, looking up at the sky. It's really over. The department is being gutted, too, Zane said, adjusting his cufflinks. Chief Klein retired yesterday. Half his command staff is under investigation. General Thorpe made sure the DOJ is auditing every ticket written in this county for the next 5 years. They won't be harassing anyone for a long time. Maya turned to her brother. She reached up and fixed his collar, a habit from their childhood. You saved my life, Zane. Not just that night. You saved everything. Micah still has his mom because of you. Zane smiled, a rare, genuine expression that reached his eyes. You saved yourself, Maya. You stayed calm. You made the call. I just brought the cleanup crew. Speaking of Micah, Maya grinned. He's been asking when Uncle G.I. Joe is coming to the barbecue. Zane checked his watch. Right now. And I think I left a new baseball glove in the truck. Later that afternoon, the backyard of Maya's small house was filled with the smell of charcoal and grilling ribs. It was a modest place, but today it felt like a fortress of joy. 6-year-old Micah was running around the grass, screaming with delight as he was chased by a giant man with a beard, Sergeant Major Gunnar Voss, who had turned out to be a surprisingly gentle playmate when he wasn't stripping police cars for evidence. Zane sat on the porch steps, a cold soda in his hand, watching his nephew laugh. The tension that usually coiled in his gut, the soldier's constant anticipation of danger, had finally unspooled. Maya sat down beside him. You know, Mrs. Ellis told me the other moms are talking. Zane raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? About what? About the nurse whose brother brought a literal army to a traffic stop. Legend says you have a satellite laser pointed at the mayor's house. Zane chuckled. I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of any orbital assets. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the trees. You going back soon? Maya asked quietly, the fear creeping back into her voice. Not for a while, Zane said. He looked at her, his expression serious. Thorpe gave me some leave, said I needed to reintegrate. I think I'm going to stick around. Make sure the new police chief knows the rules. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. Good. We sleep better when you're here. I'm always here, Maya, Zane whispered, looking at Micah catching the ball Gunnar threw. Even when I'm halfway across the world, I'm always watching. And God help the next person who tries to hurt this family. As the sun set, casting long golden shadows across the yard, the darkness didn't feel scary anymore. It just felt like peace. We often think of heroes as people who fly or wear capes. But in the real world, true heroism is about standing up when you are terrified. Maya was a hero because she kept her cool in the face of absolute power. And Zane was a hero not because of his guns or his rank, but because he used his strength to protect the vulnerable. This story is a reminder that authority without accountability is tyranny. Officer Donovan thought his badge made him untouchable. He thought Maya was weak because she was alone. He forgot that even the quietest people have guardians in the shadows. Justice doesn't always come with a siren. Sometimes it comes with a phone call. And sometimes the most dangerous thing a bully can do is pick a fight with a family that protects its own. Wow, I still get chills thinking about that moment when the headlights turned on. What a ride. I want to know what you think. Was Zane's reaction too extreme? Or did Officer Donovan get exactly what he deserved? If you were in Maya's shoes, who's the one person you would call? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new episode. We have an even crazier story coming up next week about a landlord who tried to evict a retired Navy SEAL. You do not want to miss that. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there and remember, always know who you're messing with.